Here we are. It's, what is it? It's Wednesday, it's 1 o'clock. This is Life in the Law, and I'm hosting it. My name is Jay Fidell, and I'm happy to host it with Diane Desierto. She's an associate professor at the William S. Richardson School of Law, and she just has come into tenure now. This is why she's all aglow. Welcome to the show, Diane.
Thank you so much, Jay. It's good to be here.
So anyway, she's also co-director of the ASEAN Law Center, as more specifically the ASEAN Law and Integration Center, and she's an adjunct fellow at the East-West Center. How do you sleep at night?
Very well.
Good. Okay, and today we're going to talk about, here on Life in the Law, we're talk about the start of the ASEAN Economic Community, because it's just starting now. What better person could we have? What better person could we have to talk about it?
Well, it's supposed to start. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations is composed of 10 states, 10 Southeast Asian states. For those who aren't familiar, it's Cambodia, Brunei Darussalam, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, Vietnam, Laos, PDR, am I missing someone? Indonesia.
Everybody on the peninsula there, though.
Everyone is
no
10
pukas
member
there.
states of
Yeah, okay.
Southeast Asia, all of differing incomes and differing levels of growth. You've got emerging markets such as Cambodia, Myanmar, and Laos, PDR. You've got powerhouses that have the highest GDP per capita, such as Singapore, which is at $53,000 per capita, and Brunei Darussalam, which is an oil-rich sultanate. And you've got middle-income countries such as the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam.
You're from the Philippines.
Yes, I am.
And in fact, you're a practicing lawyer in the Philippines as we speak.
Yes, I am. I do practice international law, and I also practice appellate litigation in the Philippines. I used to be a law professor at the University of the Philippines and also at Peking University, China.
But you seem like such a nice person.
I don't think that's incompatible, but yes.
Okay, we're going to explore all these things.
Sure.
But, looking at ASEAN for a minute, it really strikes me. You list all those countries that are all involved. For a long time on these shows that we do here at ThinkTech, I was asking our, Asian correspondents one question, always fascinated me. Do you think that the ASEAN nations would ever sort of create a Eurozone? Would they ever get together economically? And the answer was consistently, no, they don't really get along that well. They're not going to be able to do it. But it looks like we have come into a different time, Diane.
Well, it's a popular perception that whatever's going to take place in ASEAN will be the same thing as the European Union. That's not the case. It's a single market and production-based. There is no common currency. But the region is leveraging its different resources and is basically constituting a very important, significant hub in global production. It's not a direct rival to China, because in the value chain, ASEAN, the Southeast Asian nations, actually produce the intermediate goods that end up being exported to China. China assembles as finished goods, and then they get shipped to the United States. Mm-hmm. So it's an important player in the global sphere, but it's also been cooperating for 40 years now. A lot of people think when they're reading the news about this ASEAN Economic Community as if it's just coming into being. This has been 40 years in the process where the countries came together on different issues, collaborating on maritime issues, on energy, on environmental resources, on agriculture, on food, on energy, transport, all of these tremendous different sectoral issues, and it's only now that it's coalescing into a coherent rules-based organization such as the ASEAN Charter, under the ASEAN Charter.
40 years.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the process by which all these disparate countries, I mean, they do have common economic interests, but how do you bring them together? I mean, who calls whom, and what do they say?
I'm not privy to what goes on. All I am is a scholar and a practitioner and a student from the region, and also somebody who has a deep affinity for the region. the points in Southeast Asian history have been very disparate. Power has been leveraged very differently in the region for the last 40 years. There were dominant players in the beginning. The original 5 ASEAN member states came together under the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in 1976, primarily to contain open conflict between them, between Indonesia and the Philippines, between Malaysia and the Philippines, between Thailand. There was a lot of conflicts between these 5 original players. They came together under a treaty, and from that initial treaty, incremental decisions were made. Cooperation on this front, cooperation on smaller issues, on humanitarian assistance, on environmental cooperation, and common legislation for certain areas.
Little steps, all in the
Little
same direction.
steps, and a lot of it was confidence building,
Yeah.
because there was the history of what is known as confrontasi between Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines.
What does
So
that mean, confrontation?
confrontation, it was open conflict. And for a maritime region such as Southeast Asia, where borders are so porous, that was incredibly unstable in the post-decolonization process. So in the beginning, it might have been the case that the original 5 were the most dominant voices in the region. And so much of decision-making was actually not done in open diplomatic conferences. There was a lot of backdoor negotiations, which is why this mushawara mufakat policy,
What does
which
that stand
means
for?
ASEAN back then, 40 years ago, would only decide by consensus and by unanimity. Positive consensus and positive unanimity. That's different this time around. There's a slight difference this time
Majority
around.
rules?
Well, in 2008, the 10 member states passed a charter that bound them to become a rules-based organization, which does still respect the principle of sovereignty among the 10 member states, but also, even if there is a decision-making process of consensus, if consensus cannot be reached, they can agree on an alternative mode of decision-making. That's landmark, considering that many critics of this region have always said this region is never going to go anywhere because everyone has to agree. But now, because there's an alternative mode of decision-making, if they can't reach a positive 10 votes, they themselves can agree on another form of voting.
That's brilliant, brilliant.
So-
It takes you completely to a new phase.
Yes.
But have they done it? Have they actually agreed on a new form of decision-making?
Well, so far in the major decisions, ASEAN has been quite lucky in mustering consensus. Right now, the decision-making takes place at the very top with the heads of state in the ASEAN summit. And in the last ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur and Langkawi, Malaysia, just last April, many decisions were reached not just on political security issues, but also economic issues, also social-cultural community issues. There are serious challenges to the integration process when you say that there will be free movement of goods, capital, labor, services. That comes with its own corresponding set of challenges for 10 very different states with all the regions of the world, religions of the world represented in these states. $2.3 trillion in collective GDP.
What population collectively?
About 600 million. And most of the world's migrant laborers come from this part of the world. And so it's quite an
Send
exciting
capital
region.
back.
And they do send capital back. That also partly accounts for the tremendous growth of the region. The region itself is at around 7% growth thus far and started outpacing China 2 years ago. And that's why it's an exciting time. For anybody who's been to Southeast Asia, the skyline is changing. I mean, even just flying into any of these
See the
states.
skyscrapers.
Phnom Penh 10 years ago does not look the same way as it does now. Myanmar right now is the hub of so much mining, so much telecoms growth. Basically, they're growing the financial industry from zero, ground zero. The Philippines has also been experiencing its own prosperity and economic growth, steady economic growth for the last 5 years. So Malaysia, Indonesia, still natural resource powerhouses, and Singapore. Singapore is the major financial, legal player in the region.
In your role as a lawyer out of the Philippines, Have you visited all these places? You sound like you have.
I've been to 8 of the 10.
Okay.
I have not yet been to Laos, PDR, and Brunei Darussalam, although I was supposed to do that this year, but I clock in so many miles in the course of my work that I know at some point we're getting there.
But you would have to, in your work, you would have to
Yes.
see as much as possible to see how they're coming together. One question, a curiosity point. You know, all these countries, or at least I would guess that all or most all, are getting investment, maybe technology from
Yes.
China. You know, China is the 800-pounder just to the north. And China is ambitious, and that's probably an understatement. How does China feel about the coming together of ASEAN?
Well, ASEAN and China have a strong partnership. ASEAN has managed to leverage its partnerships with all its investors. The European Union is still the largest investor in ASEAN, followed by Japan, and then the United States, and then China. Among all of these key investors, ASEAN, because of its diversity, has tried to maintain political neutrality and centrality as part of its policy. China does not see ASEAN as a direct competitor precisely because in the value chain, in terms of production,
They're incorporating the goods.
they're incorporating intermediate goods. I mean, the production bases in Vietnam, in Cambodia, in the Philippines, in Indonesia, those intermediate goods are processed and shipped for final assembly and re-export by China.
So this works well.
Absolutely.
China invests, China gets the goods.
Yes.
It's the whole thing about labor being just a little cheaper than in China.
Well, there's also still some competition on some fronts because several of the Southeast Asian countries are shifting manufacturing, have been shifting manufacturing to directly compete with China as well. Vietnam has managed to lower its wages to the point that it is competitive with wages in China. So for production in certain areas, Vietnam's a direct competitor. And the same with the Philippines, the same with Indonesia. But that's variable. If you take a look at the figures across the board, as the World Bank reported, and the UN Conference on Trade and Development reported in its World Development Outlook, it's a complementary rather than a competitive relationship.
That's a great way to be, a great way to try to keep it that way,
Yes,
too.
yes.
But there must be leaders, you know, there must be people who pop up and, you know, are the most articulate and maybe, well, they exhibit the style of leadership among the group. Do we know who they are?
Well, that's a long list. The ASEAN Charter did not come into being in the efforts, based on the efforts of one person or one country. Indonesia is the headquarters for the ASEAN Secretariat, but in reality, many key Southeast Asian leaders lent full weight and support to this vision for Southeast Asia. President Ramos of the Philippines was one of them. Former Minister Anwar Ibrahim of Malaysia was also one of them. Indonesia was also one of them. So everyone had their respective counterparts. Singapore, under Lee Kuan Yew, certainly envisaged that this would be, ASEAN would be a tremendous complement to its strength as a shipping hub, as a legal and financial services hub for the region. There have been many voices. We can talk about political voices, but there are also civil society voices that are quite active in the region. Human rights, for example, which is still, I would say, still in an incremental development, pace of development in the ASEAN institutions, is largely driven by civil society organizations. It is not driven to date by the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. My colleague David Cohen at the law school works with the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights precisely because they still read their mandate so narrowly and they are not openly accepting complaints or investigating or doing any fact-finding in relation to human rights abuses. So
This is really
a lot of this is
good
taking
time.
place at the national level, but also because civil society groups in the region have mobilized. So on the public and private front, there is so much activity in the region.
It's perfect for you.
Well, it's also perfect for Hawaii.
Yes, well, you, Hawaii, everything. And it's time for a break.
Yes.
This is Diane Desierto, She is an associate professor at the William S. Richardson School of Law. She's also co-director of the ASEAN Law Center. And we're here on Life in the Law today, Wednesday, and we're talking about the start of the ASEAN Economic Community. It's really important. And when we come back, we're going to talk about how it benefits each of the nations, why they are in the common good on this, why they are together. We'll be right back.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevlin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday. Aloha.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Hey, we're back. We're live. We're going to do exactly what we said we were going to do. We're going to pursue with Diane Desierto. We're going to pursue exactly why the nations of ASEAN like to be in ASEAN. What good does it do them? You know, as opposed to trading by themselves in a world that is trading with itself a lot these days. What's the benefit for them?
Well, first and foremost, let's not think that every person in all of the 10 Southeast Asian states actually know what it means to be Southeast Asian. And the reason why I said there's a unique relationship between Hawaii and Southeast Asia was because the region, the notion of Southeast Asia, was actually coined by the US military back then when it was the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. The region is so diverse. You've got Buddhist, Islamic, Christian, Hindu, so many religions in 10 states that it's really hard to envisage what is the common Southeast Asian identity. And even to this day, many of the states are still struggling with it. In the last summit, they said that ASEAN has to be people-centered. It is supposed to be individual-centered. It is meant to uplift the individual predicament, the individual condition, human condition.
What a noble effort.
That is a noble effort, but it also comes with its challenges. The difficulty with ASEAN integration, unlike European integration, the budget of the ASEAN Secretariat is about $20 million. The contribution of each state to the regional governance is about $2 million.
Not enough.
That's not enough. The European Union, with its army of bureaucrats, has a budget of about 141 billion.
Billion.
Sorry, million, $144
Million.
million dollars, and about 5,000 civil servants. ASEAN, for its legal affairs division, for example, only has 4 lawyers. And that's hard to do when you're trying to centralize and coordinate and harmonize among 10 different states.
You have to be ahead of the game rather than trying to catch up on the game.
But why are all the 10 states in it? Because I think the collective agreement is we are stronger together than apart. In many ways, that's not just in terms of the economy, but also in terms of security, in terms of trading and having the benefits of, for example, a single window where customs processing is completely efficient and standardized across the region, when there's mutual recognition of professional qualifications in the region. If you were, say, a healthcare worker in one part of ASEAN, you could just as easily work and have your credentials recognized in any of the 9 other member states.
So it begins to soften the borders.
It has, actually. Right now, none of the Southeast Asian nationals need a visa to go into any ASEAN member state. You can start at the airport and realize that you don't have to queue along with everyone else.
This is a
There's a
great
very
blessing.
special ASEAN lane. It's just like the
love it.
European Union, where it's borderless to that
Makes you
extent.
feel good, among other things.
Pretty much. But there's also many things ahead. Education is one, because educational standards are variable, and we're looking towards assisting that. And the higher education universities that are also trying to promote exchanges, and they're interested in Hawaii also for the same reason about these exchanges. And in general, it's trying to see how 600 million people decide together as part of one organization. There are layers, and we have to differentiate between what happens at the national level, at the federal level for some states, or at the local level, and what happens at the regional level. The states have accepted regional governance under the charter only within certain competences, not for all. The implementation of ASEAN obligations are primarily left to the individual nation states.
But it's likely to grow, isn't it?
It
It must be
is.
growing as we speak.
The numbers are promising all around. I mean, take a look at the Financial Times or any of the recent estimates from Moody's or the figures and projections. Most of the shift in emerging markets is taking place in Southeast Asia. I just read somewhere, I think just last week, that the highest investment has been posted in Southeast Asia for foreign direct investment. That's infrastructure projects, connectivity projects, trade, long-term growth in the region. That means jobs, of course, that means economic growth, but it doesn't mean eliminating inequality. And that's one of the biggest fears of the challenges of integration. You could, and you'll see it actually from many of the business districts in Southeast Asia. You could have the huge skylines and skyscrapers. Right next to them, in
Slums.
stark contrast, are the slums.
We have that here in Kaka'ako.
There we go. There's not a whole lot of difference, except for the fact that for these 10 states, they're willing to stake their future in joining and cooperating with each other, because otherwise they would not be able to leverage resources more efficiently.
My reaction is, it's only beginning. I mean,
Yes.
that's why we named this the start of the
Yes.
ASEAN Economic Community, because I mean that was a lucky
Yeah.
choice of words, but in fact it seems to me as you go forward, and I see you as a voice on all of this, there are so many things that will appeal to people
Yes.
to make additional collaborations. It's like you walk down the path looking for additional collaborations.
Oh, absolutely. Right now in the news, when anyone thinks of Southeast Asia, it's primarily the South China Sea. And just last week, I served as a legal expert at the ASEAN China Joint Working Group. But that's not the only work that I do. I also work not just on maritime issues, but also on environmental cooperation, on investment. Next week, I'm heading for the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on Investment to assist them in the drafting of their regional investment treaties and how to improve them and how to monitor these investments to make sure that they're sustainable for the region. There's also energy cooperation. There's a huge plethora of cooperation all around. The difference between the European Union and ASEAN is the European Union built institutions top-down and started building cooperation top-down. They started with foreign policy and common agricultural policy and started to branch out. ASEAN, on the other hand, started doing this issue by issue horizontally, and then is only now starting to verticalize in certain areas of decision-making.
Which one is better?
I can't say. I'm a student of both. I would say that the region is experiencing tremendous prosperity and prospects for growth. There is so much investor optimism for the region. The region is also extremely cautious, both as a matter of politics, because you've got very different political situations in every state.
And culture.
And
History.
culture,
Yeah.
history, and language, which is not what you have in Europe, where there is a particular entrenched homogeneity.
Yes.
And they're primarily landlocked with, of course, a long coastline.
Right.
But Southeast Asia, if you look at it in the map, a lot of it is maritime. So The questions are always about the sharing of resources, the management of common threats, transnational crimes, drug trafficking, and human trafficking.
How about corruption? Does this affect or involve corruption or the solution to corruption at all?
Absolutely. It's not in any coincidence that many of the 10 member states are in Transparency International's list, although there have been improvements. The Philippines, for example, has really improved under this current administration, and has, because of confidence from investors with the lack of corruption, there have been more investors willing to come in knowing that there won't be a 25% premium placed on a project price. That's important.
Not healthy.
No, that absolutely, and that's important because if we go back to what the charter committed all the states to, they committed all the states to rule of law, to access to justice, to democratic freedoms, to human rights, to commitments under international law. That's so far-reaching that when I started doing this work more intensively 10 years ago, everyone thought, why are you investing in a region that's never going to follow what it has said? And I said, just wait. Why? Because it's both a combination of economics, education, and politics. The demographic, the voter demographic for the 10 Southeast Asian nations is also critical. You have an increasingly large voter base of between 20 to 40 who are active in the workforce, who have higher literacy, who have better access to education, and as such also have more expectations of their governments. So
Expectations of government is a very good thing.
yes.
It is an essential element for democracy, no?
It is, but democratization is a long thing coming. Let's not forget that Myanmar is still run by the military junta. Vietnam is a one-party state. It's not fully democratic. Singapore is a one-party state. There's a considerable level of diversity. Cambodia is also run by a military apparatus. This is not going to take place overnight. Democratization is always going to be contested within the region.
And could be threatening for some of these forms of government.
Absolutely. And for certain, especially it's interesting because from 2016 to about 2018, most of the 10 member states are going to go through elections. There will be changes in leadership throughout the region. So it'll be interesting to see how, when the economic community is already starting, or at least has started its regional economic governance, how the different countries will adapt, considering that polities will change, preferences will change. It's very much like the UK right now, which is deciding what to do about whether to stay in the European Union or not. I don't think that's going to be the problem in ASEAN because everyone wants to maximize what they can get from this partnership.
I have so many questions for
Yes.
you. We could go on. We will go on.
Yes.
After this break. When we
Okay.
come back from the break, I'm going to find out from you. I'm going to try to find out from you why you are teaching here and what it's like to teach students about this.
Why not?
There you go. We already know what she's going to say.
Okay.
That's Diane Desierto, and she's an associate professor at the William S. Richardson School of Law, co-director of the ASEAN Law Center there. We're at Life in the Law, if you hadn't noticed, and we're talking about the start of the ASEAN Economic Community. We'll be right back for more.
Aloha, my name is Josh Green. I'm a senator from the Big Island. I work in the ER there. But on Tuesday afternoons, I get to come and spend 45 minutes to an hour with Jay Fidell and the ThinkTech staff. They're terrific professionals. They help us to bring some of the leading cutting-edge topics here across our state to you. So you can join us at our show on healthcare in Hawaii to talk with leaders from across all the spectrum of health in our state, or you can join us for any other show where we talk about economic development or tourism or some really eclectic programs too. So really, we'd love to see you here on our show. Thanks for joining us and thanks for supporting us.
Hi, aloha. My name is Chris Leatham, and I host a show called The Economy and You. The show plays every Wednesday at noon, and on my show, I bring on guests who are interested or working in the technology space. And so I'd like you to come and watch the show and learn with me about all the sort of exciting things that we're doing in Hawaii to build and grow our economy ecosystem. So I'd like to say aloha, and I look forward to seeing you on the show. Thank you.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Diane Desierto. She's an associate professor at the William S. Richardson School of Law here on Life in the Law. We are honored, delighted to have her and to be able to learn from her. I feel like I'm in class today.
No.
And we're talking about the start of the ASEAN Economic Community, but more. So, but I want to take a moment and just talk about, why you're at the William S. Richardson School of Law. What is happening at the School of Law that it could draw you and have this kind of knowledge, this kind of discussion there? What makes it work for you?
Well, put it this way. Before I came to Richardson, I had been living in Europe. I had also been living in the United States. I had taught in China, I taught in the Philippines, I'd worked in Germany, also in Paris, also in New York. I clerked at the International Court of Justice. And
I think I'm getting a headache, but go ahead.
it was basically I'd been peripatetic for 10 years. And then when Richardson asked me to come, I had never been to Hawaii. I have no family here. I know of it because it's the world famous paradise. And so when I came in to give that initial discussion and to meet colleagues here, the first thing I thought of was it looks so eerily like home. And home for me is Cebu in the Philippines where my parents grew up. And I spent so many summers, but just the warmth of people here was one. The fact that there were so many students who were interested in international law, comparative law, and Asian law was another. And the fact that I had colleagues, which unlike any other law school, Hawaii Richardson School of Law probably has the deepest bench when it comes to public and private areas of international and comparative law, which is why it's the best time to do a law degree at Richardson if you're looking at a career in international law practice. We actually just this year sent 2 of our students to the Hong Kong International Arbitration Center. They're the very first interns from Richardson who got that opportunity.
Not yet graduated.
Not yet.
Oh,
I
how
also, yes, I also, when I came in here, also started the International Economic Law class, which focuses on trade, finance, and investment, but I teach it from an economic, social, cultural rights standpoint. So, and I also opened the International Arbitration class for investment and commercial arbitration. Students are great, and so when you ask me why I'm teaching here, the question is, why not?
Okay, well,
yeah.
Really, I mean, I think I see you as part of a global process, a globalization of law and of law education, a globalization of arbitration and mediation. And you're in the right place as far as I'm concerned, both in terms of what you've selected to study and being here to help us, because you're definitely in addition to a place we want to go to.
Well, legal education, Jay, has also been changing. If we know that the admission numbers are tough all around the U.S. right now, Richardson is holding its ground very well and is in a very unique niche position to be able to directly place its graduates in that clear convergence between East and West. And that's not just a figure of speech. The kind of curriculum we have marries very solid US law along with very broad interests in international public and private law and Asian law. If you ask any practitioner what they're looking for right now in terms of lawyers and law firms, they're not looking for JDs who are coming from books to books. They want JDs who are flexible. They want graduates who are flexible. NYU changed its 3rd year of law school precisely to internationalize that 3rd year, to give clerkship opportunities, internship opportunities, sending out their students to do human rights work everywhere else. We're already doing it. We just probably don't publicize it as much.
Yeah.
We have students who, with my co-director, David Cohen, also work on human rights issues directly in Asia with the Human Rights Resource Center in ASEAN. On my part, I've sent students to international arbitration centers. My first group of students for the ASEAN Law Seminar, which is the very first ASEAN law course in the United States, went to the ASEAN Secretariat, met with the Legal Affairs Division, presented their class project, which is actually a book that's going to be published soon on the bilateral investment treaties of Southeast Asia, which the ASEAN Secretariat was very happy to get, which practitioners were very happy to see, because there's all this tremendous diversity and not a whole lot of research, practice-oriented research going towards it. So I would say Richardson is in a very unique spot, and if you want to do international law, this is the most exciting time to do it, especially at this time when the disputes are here, the investment disputes, the growth in international project finance matters are in Asia. The engagement between China, Southeast Asia, and the United States is a complex one. It's all taking place right here. And so why do it anywhere else in the mainland and try to imagine what it looks like when you could be in Hawaii and literally be right in there, knowing how comple's and looking at Hawaii as neutral ground for all of these competing issues.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Do you see Hawaii as having a legitimate opportunity to be a leader or a venue, if you will,
Yes.
in international arbitration, especially affecting Asia and ASEAN, where people will come here for that neutral ground and submit to, I guess, local international lawyers, trained maybe at William S. Richardson, who could represent, big corporate parties, even nations, for the resolution of disputes here?
Well, that's interesting you bring it up, because in January, Lucy Reed, who was the former president of the American Society of International Law and is the head of global arbitration of Freshfields, we brought her over and she spoke at the Hawaii Supreme Court precisely to discuss what the pros and cons are of an arbitration center vis-a-vis being an arbitration venue. Lucy and I are of the same view on this. Hawaii can be a venue for disputes, not necessarily a center. A center requires tremendous commitment of resources.
What's the difference?
A center, if you're an arbitration center, you not only make the appointments for arbitrators, but also usually that becomes the seat of the arbitration that has an impact on the contract, because the contract, it should be, if it stipulates that the applicable law is the seat of the arbitration, then it's going to be, for in this case, US law. But Hawaii has tremendous competition. Many in the region are already established. For Asia, there's the Hong Kong International Arbitration Center and the Singapore International Arbitration Center, which has made the tremendous investment over the last 20 years. For the US side, of course, you've got New York, which is the arbitration hub. But there is a possibility to be a venue for, say, investor-state disputes. We can partner up with, for example, the World Bank's Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes, ICSID, or the Permanent Court of Arbitration of The Hague, or Singapore International Arbitration Center, or Hong Kong International Arbitration Center. We provide the venue for people to come, but not necessarily be the actual center that has to deal with all the logistical and heavy financial commitments that's required. And it's actually quite attuned to the fact that under this administration, with Obama having authored the pivot to Asia, it's fitting to have it in Hawaii. Hawaii is the ideal place for people to come, talk about disputes, try to see whether or not there could be mediation facilities that would be brought in. And that would be tremendously good, not just for domestic practitioners, but also for businesses here in Hawaii.
Would I bring my own lawyer if I came from Asia, or would I try to find one here?
Well, you'll need both. You'll need your own lawyer. Like in any arbitration, you'll need your own lawyer plus a domestic lawyer if there are any incidents, local incidents before the courts, for example, that need to be enforced. Mm-hmm. So there are different models to go about it. But here, the US, Hawaii has the advantage of having tremendously amazing courts. It's US law. And it's also, there's been great innovations made in the past with respect to the dispute resolution statute, the arbitration statute that was written by others.
We have a lot of experience with that.
And there's a lot of experience. It's a deep bench in the bar. It's a question of how business and the legal community and the political leadership can come together to think about leveraging Hawaii's unique position at this time when all of this is taking place in the Asia Pacific. I find it so interesting because even for us at the ASEAN Law and Integration Center, and it's only been a year and a half since David Cohen and I started it, because we basically shepherded all our projects together under the same center. David runs everything, works with the 10 constitutional courts of Southeast Asia on rule of law and access to justice, capacity building, training. I do a lot of international economic law, so investment, trade, finance, maritime issues, environment, energy.
Are you also an arbitrator?
I have been nominated to join one of the commercial arbitration boards. I have not yet followed up on any of that, mainly because I'm at a point in my life where I'm building. I'm more interested in writing about arbitration, potentially advising on arbitration, but not yet sitting as an arbitrator. Why? Because when you wear different hats, it sort of clouds
Yes.
how you will be as an
You
academic.
can set your path.
Yes.
So I make you now governor of the state, okay?
No.
If you like, I'll make you both houses of the legislature as well.
That's
What
just-
do we do in order to, go down the path to be an international venue for Asia? What do we do?
Well, two things. We recommended, first of all, to start convening an international advisory board from the experienced arbitral institutions. So that could be London, that could be Hong Kong, Singapore, the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague, New York. Then the leadership could start thinking of what kind of financial commitments are required to be able to provide the facilities that are necessary to hold arbitration hearings.
Infrastructure.
It's infrastructure. It's basically you need translators. You need people who will be able to handle ongoing hearings. I mean, if you've ever been to Maxwell Chambers in Singapore, it's state of the art, and it's all centralized in one building. And I took my students through it, but as they told me later on, they said, "Professor, this is not something Hawaii can't do." I said, "Absolutely. If there's commitment from the leadership, and since there is already a good working law that is in place, it's just other pieces that can be followed up. It's possible. There also has to be engagement from the domestic bar to be supportive of arbitration and to be supportive of Hawaii's new face or renewed face, so to speak, in international
To
dispute
learn about
settlement.
it and participate in
Yes,
it.
yes. And of course, at Richardson, we would always welcome them to come back if they wanted to take courses with us and the new programs that we've been offering.
Richardson would be a hub of this.
Yes.
And my last question for you, because we're almost out
Yes.
of time, is your students, the ones who are interested in this, the ones who sit like me and want to know more, who are they? Why are they interested? Where are they coming from? What are their plans?
I have the most fascinating set of students in Richardson, and I'm not kidding. When people used to ask me, why come to Hawaii, I said, why not? Because somebody asked me before, won't you feel isolated? You've been living around the world. I said, sure, but the world is also here. And I'm not kidding, because I have students who are from all over the mainland, who are also from Hawaii, who are also from Asia, who are from the Middle East, who are from Europe. And I didn't expect that, frankly, when I came in. And not to mention that also my native Hawaiian students are deeply immersed and engaged in questions that involve economic self-determination for their state. There are many of these questions that they're interested in. They have a deep stake in what goes on in Hawaii, and they're intellectually curious, thoughtful, but at the same time, they know how to have fun. And the one thing that I most valued seeing them interact with the ASEAN Secretariat and with the leaders of the arbitration centers is how culturally respectful and sensitive they all were. You can't teach that. You can teach competence. But the fact that in one session, I remember my students were making their presentation to the Bani Indonesian Arbitral Center. And then a sudden call to prayers, the usual call to prayers in a Muslim country, was taking place. My students just stopped, bowed their heads, because they knew that the arbitral Secretary General and the experienced veteran leaders of arbitration in Indonesia did want to continue with their call to prayer. And that impressed everyone. That's not something that you'll probably find in any other law school. This law school teaches respect from the ground up. It's inculcated in the DNA. For that reason, I think there's no reason why these students will not succeed.
Oh, great.
Great.
All right, well, that's fabulous. Diane Desierto, Assistant Professor at the William S. Richardson School of Law and Co-Director of the ASEAN Law Center, Law and Integration Center, yeah,
Thank you.
to be specific. Here we are in Life in the Law. We've had a great discussion with her about the start of the ASEAN economic community and more. And it's only a start with us because we want to come back and do it again.
Thank you, Jay.
Diane.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be here.
Aloha.
Aloha.